Hey there guys, today is book review day and I'm going to be reviewing Flatland by Edwin Abbott, A squared, if you will. The book was divided into two parts, and the first part we meet our protagonist, A square, who is called A square. Like that's literally his name. His name is A square and he is a square, like a literal 2D square. And A square lives in a two-dimensional world called Flatland. And in Flatland, the number of sides you have sort of determines your social status. And as you can imagine, the people with more sides are higher in the ladder in society. So circles are at the top, by which I mean they're the elite in the society, and triangles are at the bottom, right next to lines. And as you can imagine, the people with more sides are higher in the ladder in society. So circles are at the top, by which I mean they're the elite in the society, and triangles are at the bottom, right next to lines. So women are lines and they're at the bottom of the society, just like triangles are. One thing that was pretty interesting was it doesn't really matter if the woman was born from a high-born family or nothing, she always remained a line, as opposed to the other way around. So for example, if the man is a triangle, his male son is going to become a square. And if the square has a son, the son is going to be a pentagon. And if the pentagon has a son, it's going to be a hexagon, that way up until it gets to a circle, I guess. But the woman, if she has a daughter, she's always going to remain a line. She's stuck. Women are stuck as lines for the rest of their existence on this planet, which I thought was pretty interesting. Triangles, which are the lowest people in the society for men, and lines, they're also technically the most dangerous in the society. So because they have like really sharp ends, they can pierce and kill the others. But then this has a sort of like a bee effect kind of thing, where, you know, if a bee stings you, the bee itself dies, or at least that's what I've heard. In the same way, if the lines pierce the other shapes, they die as well, because they sort of like break in them, you know. And the first part of the book just sort of like goes into the politics, the culture, the geography, the history of life in this world. It really had some fun bits, the first part I mean, exploring these things. There were some funny bits there, it was really interesting, but I don't think that's the best part of the book. The best part of the book comes in the second part of the book, action time. And this is where all the fun, in my opinion, begins. So it starts out by our protagonist, A Square, dreaming of Lineland. So A Square is in Flatland, a 2D world, and he dreams of Lineland, a one-dimensional world where everything is on a straight line. And he goes there, he comes back from this dream flabbergasted by what he just witnessed. And just as he's processing this thought, not being able to comprehend what he just witnessed, enter a sphere. By sphere, I mean a 3D sphere, here to shake up A Square's worldview. So the plot of the book is essentially, can A Square comprehend a sphere? It sounds like a really bad math joke, but yeah, that's really what the book is about, and that's sort of like the struggle that ensues. And I would describe it as sort of like a mathematical opera. There are just a lot of maths in the book, and if you're a math student, you probably enjoy it a lot more. I'm not, so there are probably lots of things I missed. There are like lots of satirical jabs as well. For example, in the caste system, there's also like the treatment of women in the Victorian era, sort of like implying that women in the Victorian era were more capable of what the society allowed them to do at the time. Now that is a bit dated in the sense that I don't think the women in 2023 have the same struggles that women in the Victorian era had. Not in the West anyways, at least that's what I think. But it's very good or nice to read books like this that sort of remind us how far we've come as a society, and also like try to remind us that there might be things that we are doing now that we don't witness, that we don't know are horrible, and sort of like draws our attention to that, you know. Something that also struck me as hilariously absurd and relatable was the shape's self-seriousness, if that's a word. They took themselves so seriously, fighting wars, snubbing each other, and treating the lesser-sided beings so badly. And it made me think, are we humans rolling around this vast universe just as ridiculous and insignificant as these shapes are? You know, we take ourselves so seriously, but we might just be as ridiculous as the squares and the triangles and the circles I'm reading about in the grand scheme of things. So the answer to that question is we're probably just as ridiculous and insignificant, you know. And there's also something I noticed as well, is that the sphere, he was so arrogant. The sphere, I mean, not the square. The sphere was so arrogant that he came to the 2D world to try and convince the square that a 3D world exists. But when the square suggested to the sphere that a 4D world might exist, the sphere was so arrogant that he chose not to accept this. Sound familiar? I feel like this is like a biting comment on our human arrogance, and just because how we can't fathom something sometimes, we almost dismiss it. But yeah, I think the book is short, sharp. It's also like packed with a lot of diagrams to help you grasp what's really going on. It also paints a vivid picture of what life would look like if it was confined to 2 dimensions from the point of view of a square. And in that way, the diagrams were really helpful because you're able to picture the world from a square's point of view. The book might be about shapes, but I would say that the ideas in it were really rounded in some way. So it was really good. Yeah, I think that's all. I mean, ponder on this before I leave. If you're feeling a bit too superior or significant, or you find that you're taking yourself too seriously, like I do sometimes, it might be worth remembering that, like, in the grand scheme of things, we're probably all just shapes in a cosmic geometric book, you know? Anyways, I'll go away now. Catch you in the next one.